There's a lot of different screening buckets out there. Most of them are vibratory, which is really hard on your carrier. Like a vibrating deck on a excavator boom arm, it just shakes everything apart. It can really damage your equipment. Ours is a smooth rotating design. It speeds up and slows down when it gets to the start and stop point.
And welcome to the Steel and Dirt Podcast. Today we're speaking with Joshua at FlipScreen, which is a leading manufacturer of screening attachments for heavy construction equipment. And in this episode, we're going to talk about how contractors can easily screen and sort materials on site, which is a big time saver and money saver by reducing the need for manual labor and additional equipment. Joshua, welcome to the show. Good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we're tickled to have you because this is something we have not gotten into much yet. And just in case some of the viewers aren't aware, tell everybody what a screening bucket is and how they work.
A screening bucket basically is an attachment that goes on an excavator, skid steer, or wheel loader, small tractor, anything that can take an attachment. And what the FlipScreen does, it's different than everything else and actually rotates and separates the material inside the bucket. There's a patented design that, and it's really in the shape of it and how it spins. It's not perfectly round. It looks more like a clamshell from the side. And there's a plate inside there that catches the material, flips it around inside of there, and really helps to separate the material faster and more efficiently.
Okay. Now, in screening, I'm sure there's tons of different materials that people screen. What are some of the types of materials that these will handle?
Our biggest customers are people in like scrap yards that have dirt piles that need to be cleaned up. They're actually going in there and mining the metal out of the existing piles that they have, so they're not having to buy more scrap. We also have a lot of contractors who need to get the dirt out of rocks for topsoil. But we have all sorts of different people screening stuff. There's one lady that does chicken feed. She unwraps chocolates inside of the FlipScreen to put inside her chicken feed. And then we have the other extreme Army contractors detonating anti-personnel mines inside of their FlipScreen.
Wow. Yeah, I can even see out on a farm how something like that could possibly be handy.
Yeah, we've got a few farmers out there cleaning fence rows and stuff like that, and their fields that may be a little bit rocky.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Now, you mentioned some of the types of equipment. What is everything that this would go on?
Everything would be anything from a walk behind little skid steer, like a Toro or a Dingo, all the way up to a Cat 994 giant wheel loader. You can put on an excavator or a skid steer. Most people put them on skid steers or excavators.
Okay, yeah, and that kind of makes the most sense. I've got a tractor with a front end loader and stuff like that, and I'm sitting here thinking, how could I use one of these? It sounds pretty interesting, actually. Um, Now, are there different types of screening buckets? How does a contractor go about selecting a particular type for a particular job?
So all of our screening buckets pretty much operate in the same way, other than how they attach to the carrier, which is the excavator or the skid steer or the loader. Um, the excavator will have an arm at the top, and the loader models, the skid steer models, will have an arm that goes kind of out to the side. Basically, they are paired up with carriers by class weight first, like the carrier weight. And then we will look at things like hydraulic flow and pressure. Although these do not need high flow, they take low flow. We just want to make sure that we're not overpowering the system with too big of a flow rate and pressure for the system in the FlipScreen.
Now, that sounds like, maybe a common mistake that a contractor might make when they're putting this together or setting this up. Are there other things they need to avoid?
Usually what they try to do is they try to buy too small of a FlipScreen for their carrier. So because they're trying to save money, obviously, but that's not ideal, and it'll damage the FlipScreen, in which case the warranty would be void and all that. So the best thing to do is to let one of our sales guys help you figure out exactly what you need. And in the long run, it's better. It's always better to go bigger than smaller. I've never had somebody call me and say, "Hey, I wish I would have got a smaller one." When they always say, "I wish I would have got a bigger one."
Are there other mistakes that contractors make as they're selecting, for particular jobs, or is it pretty black and
No, usually because our sales staff is pretty involved in the process, and we're not going to sell you something that you don't need or something that won't work. Even if it's something too big for your job, some guys may come in and they have a giant wheel loader and they want to buy a big giant flip screen, but they only got a few hundred yards of material to process. Well, that's overkill. There's no reason to buy something that's way too big. Yeah, we'd like to sell you a bigger machine, but we're not in business to operate that way. We want you to be happy with it.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that's great. I know that customer service is king, and I know people will really appreciate that. Um, you talked a little bit about the mounting process and all. What's the typical installation time and the typical installation process to put the bucket on?
So all of the skid steer models come with the standard skid steer plate, like every attachment has the old Bob Tatch style plate on there, and then the mini skid steer ones will have the mini skid steer plate or the big plate, depending on what kind you have. But the wheel loader and the excavator, the wheel loaders, they have a custom hitch that we make here in the U.S. At one of our partners in Dallas. And then we'll actually have the welder come here to our warehouse in Dallas or in Canada and weld it on, or in Australia, depending on where you get the machine from. And then the excavator models, most of those are pin top grabbers. So all we got to do is set the pins in there, and the pins are offset so that you can twist them to get the spread that you need, and then we'll just weld that down and send it out. So it should come, and we're now sending hoses out with all of our smaller equipment. So it should come plug and play, ready to go as soon as it lands.
Oh, okay, great. Now, let's talk a little bit about safety with any piece of equipment. There's got to be some safety precautions. What is some of the things that you guys instruct your customers on, and tell us a little bit about safety when using a screening bucket?
And so we want to make sure that nobody's standing close to the flip screen when it's screening. You want to make sure that if you need to get out and change mesh, that you turn off your carrier to make sure that a button's not accidentally pushed, or some kind of flow opened up so that the thing spins on you when you're going to manipulate it. Just not There's not a whole lot, but we just want to make sure it's moving. It's moving machinery. We want to make sure that your hands and face and feet and all that are well away from it while it's in operation.
Okay. Now, I want to be, for people that are totally naive on this thing, as for how it works, and I'm sure we're running some video to show it in action. But what is the basics of, how is it doing this separation and all in the bucket, or how does it work?
Okay, so basically, you want to scoop into the pile from the bottom and go up and let the material kind of fall inside of there. There's a plate that I was mentioning earlier inside of there that separates the material. If you measure from the top of that plate to the bottom of or the bottom of that plate to the top of or the bottom of the bucket opening straight back, you want to fill the machine up about a third of the way. And that is to make sure that there's a void inside of there that lets the material fall and separate, which actually speeds up the process. And then you drive over to or swing your excavator boom over to your screen pile. Then you set the thing into screen by flipping the switch inside your cab one way. You spin about 2 to 6 times usually. Whenever that's done, you drive over to your dump pile and you dump the material out. The good thing about a flip screen bucket is that it's watertight at the bottom. No material falls out once you have it scooped inside of there. And that's a whole process right there. The most common size machine that we sell is an S45, which goes on a medium sized skid steer, and that thing will screen 84 cubic yards an hour.
Talk a little bit about the maintenance. Once you've got the attachments, you're using it. What kind of maintenance do you have to do to keep this thing in good condition?
So it depends on whether you get a direct drive model or a chain drive model. We don't make the direct drive models for the smaller machines yet, like the skid steer models, but the direct drive doesn't require any daily maintenance. It's got stainless bearings, so it doesn't require any greasing or anything like that. The chain drive models do require greasing every 8 to 20 hours, depending on the machine. And there's anywhere from 2 to 4 or 6 access points on there with little stickers that tell you where to do it. Sometimes the bigger chain drive models need to have the chain tensioned every 500 hours or so. But we're really trying to shift away from the bigger chain drive models, and move towards this direct drive model, which we think is a much better piece of equipment.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, Josh, put on your sales hat. How does this screening bucket, if these contractors are using it right, how does it save them time and money on a project?
So basically, let's say you're a dirt contractor and you need to have some topsoil back there. Basically, you can go in and you can take out all of the dirt that you need to take out, screen that material on site. So all you're getting rid of is the rocks and keeping the good fill dirt there. So that's less fill dirt that you have to buy to replace what you've excavated. And your dump fees are much less because you're only taking away rocks, not dirt. Same thing with the scrap yards. They're not having to buy more material because they've already bought that material in the past. They're just screening out the bits of metal that are in the dirt that already exist and may have existed there for 60 years sometimes at the bottoms of these piles that they have on site.
Curiosity from my point of view, is there a lot of competition in this type of industry, or?
There are a lot of different, sorry to step on your toes there. There's a lot of different screening buckets out there. Most of them are vibratory, which is really hard on your carrier. Like a vibrating deck on a excavator boom arm, it just shakes everything apart. It can really damage your equipment. Ours is a smooth rotating design that it speeds up and slows down when it gets to the start and stop point.
Josh, if somebody wants to ask you and your company, tell us all the places they can find you. I heard you mention Texas, which I am looking forward to August. I'm heading out to Dallas. I hadn't been there since I lived there as a kid. And that's been a while. We lived in Richardson. Does that sound right?
Yeah, Richardson is on the north side of Dallas. We're actually in a town called Waxahachie on the south side of Dallas, about 30 minutes from downtown south. Um, we also have a warehouse in Canada, just north of Calgary, about an hour north of Calgary. We're in Australia, where our factory is. But if anybody's out there, they want to go to check us out right now, go to www.flipscreenglobal.com. And that will show you a whole bunch of information about the products, the different carriers, your industry, if you want to know how this thing would work for you. Also, our YouTube channel has hundreds of videos. I don't know if it's hundreds, but it's dozens and dozens and dozens of different types of videos and different types of material.
This is Joshua Hill with Flip Screen. Flip Screen, if you are looking for a screening bucket and you want something high quality, something that is non-vibratory, this is where you want to look. Joshua, thanks so much for spending a few minutes with us today on the Steel and Dirt podcast. Very happy to have you, and best of luck with you guys and your business.
Thank you very much.